My name is Robert Stanmore and I live in Australia. I'm an Australian. I was born in Australia. I've lived in Australia for most of my life. I'm proud to be an Australian. I live on the east coast of Australia in the state of New South Wales, not too far from the Pacific Ocean. I was born in 1941 and raised in this general area where I live now. I've been away for many years, but I've come back to retire in this general area. I was raised by godly parents. I was born in 1941. That's when the Second World War was on, and that influenced what happened in my early life. My parents had to move to town and work as part of the war effort, and then when the war was over and things settled down, we moved back to what my father always had done before, and that was dairy farming. So I grew up on a dairy farm. I grew up in a godly and a very secure family unit. My parents loved the Lord and were committed to the Lord, and so they brought me up in the ways of the Lord, and as a young boy I committed myself to the Lord at my mother's knee. I came to the Lord. I understood that I was a sinner, that I needed to be saved, and I accepted the free gift of salvation that the Lord so freely offers to us all. And that set the pattern for my life and for what I did with my life from there on. I grew up under the influence of my peers, and my peers were in a little Baptist church that I attended. My parents attended that, and a lot of my uncles and aunts and cousins, and I had a godly grandmother who was converted as a result of the Wesleyan revivals in England, and she had a great influence in my life. She came and lived with us for some time and was constantly there in the background as an influence for good and for godliness. Her husband, my grandfather, I didn't know, but I've learned a great deal about him since, and he was a great Bible student as well. There have been many men that have been an influence in my life, and this has been a wonderful thing. As I grew up, the church that I was in, a little Baptist church, they believed that the older men should teach the younger men. And I was one of the younger men, and they taught me. They didn't cram it down my neck, but whenever the opportunity arose, the older men would sit down with me and teach me the doctrines, teach me theology, teach me how to interpret the scriptures, and that influence was a constant influence as I was growing up. These older men not only taught me with their mouths and the words that they said, but I watched their lives closely. Many of them were related to me, and I could know exactly what was going on in their lives, and they proved to be men of God, and that had a great influence in my life. It reinforced everything that my father taught me, and he taught me a great deal. There was other younger men who were great peers for me. They were the young men who as a boy I looked up to and based my life on, and their influence has come right through my life up until now. I went to Sunday school, of course, as everyone did, and I recommend Sunday schools. They're a wonderful way for children to grow up and be taught all the basic Bible teaching. And I went to Sunday school, and while I was at Sunday school, as an older pupil, one of the teachers that I had, it was a man who was a godly man, a lay preacher within the church, and he taught us a series on the Old Testament prophets and the Old Testament kings, and that sparked an interest in my mind and set my mind thinking about the children of Israel, God's special chosen people, and looking at their history, and I became enthralled with the teachings of the Old Testament, the wonderful stories, and read with great excitement and enthusiasm the battles that David's men fought, and the different kings that came to the thrones, the prophets that stood up and spread the word of God and prophesied of the future and of the coming Messiah. All of these things, Sunday school set them into my heart and mind, and I went on from there to study them for myself and to discover just some of the wonderful things that are in the Old Testament that all point towards Christ in the New Testament. And that's been what I've spent most of my life studying. And so that was all sparked by this one Sunday school teacher who I'm sure at the time thought that he wasn't being very successful in teaching me anything. Then I also had an old uncle who was had a reputation as a Bible teacher, and it certainly was a reputation that was well earned. He taught me a great deal. He took time out with me to teach me when I was a boy, and then as a young man growing up, and then in my later life when I was an older married man and had children of my own, I still was going to him and learning from him, and he was still willing to teach me, and because I was willing to be taught, he was willing to take the time and teach me. And so a lot of what comes through in the doctrine course that I've got for this series comes with a lot of his influence, and a lot of it is directly what he taught me so many years ago. I was baptised as a teenager, and I decided that as time went on I needed to join a local church, and so I was baptised by immersion in a Baptist church, and I joined a local Baptist church, and I've been a member of a local Baptist church since then. So for most of my life I've been a member of a local Baptist church. I've really only been in 4 Baptist churches in my whole life, and I'm not the sort of person that thinks you should move from church to church. I'm the sort of person who thinks you should do your very best in the church you're in for as long as you can stay there. After I left school, I joined the army, and I spent 10 years in the army, and I was an army man. I fitted in perfectly into the system of the army. I joined RAME, that's Royal Australian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, and I was a tradesman as well as a soldier. The time came in 1965 when I went to the war in Vietnam, and that had a life-changing impact on me. When I came home, I didn't realise it, but I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and that became apparent as the years went on, and that's been something that I've had to live with ever since. Without my faith in the Lord, and without the Lord's help and the help of my wife and the support of other people and a certain amount of counselling, I don't know how I would have coped at all, and many times I wasn't coping. I had several nervous breakdowns until I discovered what was causing all the problem. Anyone who's got post-traumatic stress disorder, I advise you to have a good solid team of people to stand with you, and also to have counselling. Counselling doesn't solve the problem, but it helps to cope with it, and it is definitely worth doing. In 1968 I married Lynn, my wife, and that was a very wise decision and a wonderful change in my life. When I was a young boy, 16 years old, I made the decision that I would read my Bible every day from then on, and I have done that, and that was a very wise thing for me to decide. As I look back over the years, it was one of the wisest decisions that I've made. The other wisest decision I've made was in marrying my wife. She was a Christian girl who grew up in the church that I actually was brought up in. She was much younger than me, quite younger than me, and so she was just a girl growing up. But as I grew up, so did she, and eventually in 1968 we were married, and we've been married for 45 years and had a wonderful marriage, and we praise God for our marriage and for each other and for the blessing it's been to have somebody who is of one mind and one heart to work with and to live with and to go through all the experiences of life with and to be blessed by. We both had a Christian heritage. Both Lynn and I had godly Christian parents and grandparents too, and a heritage that came to us with that, and that's a wonderful heritage to have, and we've tried to pass that on to our children and our grandchildren, and we're trying to pass it on to our great-grandchildren. We have 3 daughters and 8 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, and they are taking up the challenge of the Christian heritage, and most of them know the Lord. Some of them are still only very young, of course, but it's a joy to us to see our family serving the Lord and spending their lives for Him. We believe that that's the wisest way and the most rewarding way for someone to spend their lives, and we love to see our children doing it as well as ourselves. Over the years of gradually accumulating knowledge and studying, I began to put studying together and writing it down. I was advised to do this by my old uncle. He always did it himself, and he advised me to do it, and I didn't begin to do it till after I was 50 years old, but I began then, and I gradually put together a 3-year Bible college course of doctrine, and I taught that for several years, and I put together a 2-year Old Testament survey course, which I taught for several years in Bible college. Now that after I was teaching in Bible college, I did do pastoral work for a few years and found that very rewarding and a real blessing to be able to do it. And then I've only just come abreast of technology, and I'm trying to take advantage of the opportunity that's available with technology, and so that's what these lectures are the result of. I'm trying to get them on the internet and get them out to as many people as are interested to see them. I've named the course that I've done Progressive Doctrine Made Simple. I've tried very hard to make it simple. If you find it's too simple, then I will take that as a compliment, and I will be very flattered that you've decided that it's too simple. I'll encourage you to go on and to study deeply when you've studied these lectures. Thank you.